So should you do those? I guess it's going to kind of go back to that first look or not, but should you do these before or after the ceremony?
Well, no matter what, we always try and do the separate sides of the wedding party before the ceremony. Like all the bridesmaids or bridedudes and everybody on the guy's side. We always try and get those done first because it saves so much time later. And there is time at the beginning of the wedding day to get those done. So no matter what, we always think that should be taken care of. And full wedding party takes, I'm not sure how other photographers do it, but we tend to do those in about 10, 15 minutes. There's only so many ways
5.
you can tell 15, 20 people to line up and look at the camera. So, whether you do a first look or keep it traditional, that doesn't affect our schedule much. But, it can help.
That's great. So then family photos obviously generally happen after the ceremony. Mm-hmm. How do you recommend kind of wrangling all these people and getting everyone that you want in those pictures for the family portraits, which is probably not the most fun part of the day?
Oh, definitely not.
For anybody involved.
No. Yeah. So as far as family photos go, preparation is key. And I say that because there are so many things that could get sidelined in this
that's
process.
Sammy's motto in life.
Yeah,
like she
is.
has it written on the mirror in the bathroom. Preparation.
I love it. Yeah, so not only, creating a list, and most photographers who exclusively do weddings or primarily do weddings are going to have some kind of template that they use to kind of get you started in that process, of course. But if you're working with a photographer who's not primarily in weddings or not, as experienced in weddings, just make sure you get every grouping on some kind of document and make sure that they have it prior to the wedding. The other key piece in this is make sure the family members who are going to be in the photos know to stay, because I can't tell you how many times people go missing. They go to the bar, they go to the bathroom, they go for a smoke, whatever, and we can't find them. And they're in this just one photo. And if they had just known that they needed to be there, then it would have been taken care of quickly. And so just preparation.
Yeah, that one person can really slow down the day
and
the photo process.
Yes, especially if it's somebody who's in a lot of the photos,
right? And
you literally can't take any of them until that person gets back.
That's like kind of hanging
that's
out,
a big
waiting,
deal. Like mom or dad.
Right, they're pretty important.
Yeah.
What about like people who have these like very crazy long lists for family shot lists? Like, what is your recommendation of like, how do you keep, and sometimes it's like a matter of like you have multiple, families or, divorces and all those things, but how do you recommend kind of keeping this portion going along quickly without needing 75 different groupings?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. I think the key with that would just be minimize your list as much as you can. First of all, doing a first look in this situation would be great because then you have your whole cocktail hour to do family photos. If that's something that is already going to require a ton of your time on the wedding day, then that may be a big factor to weigh in your first look or not schedule. We've had clients actually who have decided to do a first look and do all their family photos before the ceremony as well for that reason. So I would just take it on a case-by-case basis. I would ask your photographer, how much time do you think we need? Here's my list. Should we do a first look in light of the fact that I have this monstrous family photo situation? And, especially sometimes that can get complicated too if you have like a parent and a step parent who just can't be in the same place at the same time. Sometimes maybe doing some of your photos before the ceremony and some of them after the ceremony is the best way to keep people separated. So that's also a strategy that you can put into play as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think communicating any kind of family dynamics is always helpful to your photographer. So they know
absolutely
not to put people next to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. And a huge advantage of having a physical list is I can't tell you how many weddings we've done where not a key person in the family has come up to us and been like, hey, is there a photo with so-and-so? When am I in a photo? We can say, look at the list. We have a list. We are going down the list. And nobody has ever said, I don't believe the list. They just listen and wait patiently for their turn. So it is a really great idea to, even if you have it on your Apple Watch or something, just print a piece of paper so you can wave it around. And it does make people listen on the wedding day.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing too, I forgot to mention is, make sure that your photographer has people's names that they go by, because your photographer yelling out mom, dad, brother, cousin, uncle is not going to get attention quickly. Right. So make sure that they have people's names that they go by so you can get the rotations moving more quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious about something. So as a planner and as a photographer, how do you, in those two vendor categories, how do you guys communicate when, like, obviously you would have something in mind, they may have something in mind. How do y'all kind of communicate that back and forth and make sure that all kind of coordinates well?
The timeline overall.
The timeline overall with also their timeline, because I mean Kristen could go rogue, right? And she's been known to go rogue and just do whatever she wants.
Yeah. I know. I think it's important to just communicate, like Kristen was saying, with preparation. Like, communicate beforehand, and as long as you're like communicating of like, hey, this is the timeline we're looking at. This is really all the time we have. Then they can say, okay, well, then this is all we can make work. So if you have 75 people on the family shot list, we can't do that because the planner's saying we only have 15 minutes and that won't work. So I think it's like communication on the front end, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that can go the other way too. I've had situations where wedding planners gave us way too much time and had people getting ready like crazy early in the day. And, we've looked at the schedule and realized that we don't need to start that early, and, they can have more time to get ready. And so pretty much anytime you can communicate way before things get rolling, like pretty much things start falling into place about a month before the wedding as far as the timeline goes. So I would say, like, as a vendor, just being in communication before like hair and makeup times get settled and things like that, that's so crucial.
Yeah, like for me, I always try to send the photographer the timeline first before I even share it with anyone else, because I want to get their feedback and say, okay, is this going to work? This is kind of what the brides communicated to me. Does this work for you? And if they say yeah, then we can start communicating with beauty and locking that stuff in.
Yeah.
They're going to have the biggest impact on the day overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's most of our questions on photography timeline. Is there anything else that you guys had that you wanted to share?
Yeah, pretty much just as far as timing goes, one more thing to add to the equation, and thankfully when we work with wedding planners, this is often not an issue, but if you're working without a wedding planner or you just have a venue coordinator, just make sure you know when your vendor meals are happening and where they're happening, because sometimes venues will stick your photographer in some weird closet in the basement
where you belong,
and you're alone, and
just sad and lonely.
Yeah,
just sad and lonely.
Just you and your camera, chasing light.
Right. Yeah. But seriously, I mean, the best way to describe it is an anecdotal situation where one time we were doing a wedding at a rooftop venue here in Charlotte, and we were seated very far away from the action, and it was very loud and windy, and we couldn't hear what was going on, and the DJ did not communicate with us, and as a result we almost missed the cake cutting because we got our meal after all the guests did, and no one from the venue, none of the DJ's team came to communicate with us about that happening. And so obviously that doesn't happen all the time, but it's just good to know where your vendors are at all times. And that way nobody who's supposed to be there misses any of the big moments.
Yeah, because I feel like that I've heard that from other photographers too, like that this does happen without planners, that you'll be off somewhere eating dinner in some random room, and then the DJ takes it upon themselves to announce this, and you're just like running out of nowhere like, oh my gosh, I have to get this shot. So that's a great point. And making sure that your vendors have enough time to eat, and serving the meal when the bride and groom are eating is usually the best policy, right? So they can eat, because nobody wants pictures of themselves while they're eating. So you can serve that meal and everyone can feel better after eating and be there for all the big moments. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, really when it comes down to it, just vendors communicating is like so important. And I think A lot of times people just operate so independently of each other on wedding days. And really the best wedding experiences we've had from a work standpoint are when all the vendors are like, team, let's do this, team bride and groom. And, you know, it's more about like the communal experience of like working together to create the best wedding for the clients that you possibly can. And that's what we try to do at every wedding. You know, sometimes that doesn't play out very well depending on, you know, who's there. And, you know, if your DJ is an iPod, that can be a tricky situation.
That's right. That makes it a little harder
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, we always try and communicate, but those are the best wedding days when
Yeah.
all the vendors agree that the goal is do the best you can for the bride and groom.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing nothing and the planner is setting up chairs, I will help set up chairs because then the planner can get on to doing something else that's probably more important than chairs.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if we need more time to eat because the catering team is late, the DJ will talk to us and be like, hey, we're going to push this back a few minutes. Don't rush through your meal. Everything's still fine. And when we're all communicating, the wedding day is very smooth.